This is Talking Drupal, a weekly chat about web design and development from a group of people with one thing in common. We love Drupal. This is episode 324, the new simplytest.me. Welcome to Talking Drupal. Today we're talking about the new simplytest.me with Adam Bergstein and Matt Glaman. Adam is the Director of Engineering at Acquia and an Acquia Grandmaster. He has a master's in application security and is known online as Nerdstein. Adam is passionate about community governance, sustainability, and helping others shine. He joins us today with the simplytest.me project lead, and we're excited to have him join us today. Adam, welcome to the show, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, and glad I dragged Matt along as well for the ride here.
And Matt Glaman is also joining us. He's formerly the principal consultant at Bluehorn Digital, and now principal software engineer at Acquia. He's also the maintainer of PHP Stand Drupal, and he helped architect and deliver the newest version of simplytest.me. You can find him Wednesdays at 2 p.m. Central on twitch.tv/mglaman, where he generally works on PHP Stand issues and other contributed modules. Welcome to the show, Matt, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I'm Nick Laughlin, and today my co-hosts are, as usual, John Picozzi. What's new with you this week?
Hello, internet friends. What's new with me? So in the US, we just are coming off of a Thanksgiving holiday weekend. Lucky for me, and I don't know. I don't know if it's common for most people, but EPAM gives us Thanksgiving, which is a Thursday, and the following Friday off. So it was a nice long weekend, and we not last year or the year before, but we've kind of taken to going on vacation or leaving our house for Thanksgiving and kind of taking the whole family and going somewhere. So this year we actually rented a house in Maine, and my wife's family and our family all celebrated the holiday there, and it was great. It was an awesome place, and it was nice to kind of get away from our surroundings and get to somewhere new. So we were up in Bath, Maine, which is about a 4-hour drive from where we are now, but it was great. It was awesome.
Great. And joining us for the second week of his guest host tenure is Kevin Thole. What's new with you this week?
Hello, everyone. So I did something very rare in a contractor's life, or at least for me as a contractor, and took an entire week off. Didn't do any work. Normally, I usually do working vacations, which is terrible. So it was a wonderful week of sloth in Asheville. We did movie marathons. We watched all the Resident Evil. We watched all the 4 Candyman movies. We even snuck in Santa Jaws last night, only because someone at a breakfast spot was wearing a Santa ugly sweater ugly sweater with a shark with a Santa hat. We're like, have you seen Santa Jaws? He's like, wait, what? And yeah, it's a movie. It's on Prime. It's great. And then, yeah, we mostly did a nostalgia tour for me for all the places that we hit pre-pandemic and as part of Asheville camps, because a lot of the places have either changed over, some are only just reopened. So on Thanksgiving Day, we actually went to Crow and Quill and drank some fancy cocktails. So yeah, it's been a great week. And I fly home to Chicago tonight.
Very nice. Very nice. My wife and I love horror movies, so we'll try to watch those. But the Santa Jaws, I might need to sneak up on her. That might be a little too campy for her. But
it is
I love
not
kind of
horror
movies.
Whatsoever.
Oh, really?
No.
What is it?
It's B movie at its best. Although
okay.
I could go into a whole list of wonderful B movies.
Maybe we can get. So we already have Chad's book corner. Maybe we can get Kevin's B movie corner.
Oh yeah, I'd be down for that. Yeah.
Yeah, that might be fun. So joining us again is Adam Bergstein. What's new with you this week?
Yeah, also really kind of revamped after the Thanksgiving holiday here in the US. We had some misfortune, good fortune kind of thing happen where a friend of ours had his grandpa had a health issue but he had made some reservations at this completely redone old mill that was converted into suites and restaurants, like a B&B almost. And it was super cool. So he called last minute, said, hey, we had this issue come up. Do you want to take our reservation? And I literally, before hanging up the phone, I like yelled at the kids and said, get in the car, come on, we're leaving. And so we commuted the whole way over to the B&B. The building was gorgeous. It was so much fun. We ate at this brand new restaurant and had a really pleasant time. And then, obviously we'll be making sure we, check in on our friend and make sure his family's doing okay as well. So, but it was a lovely time and quite a surprise for, a Sunday evening as well. So super cool.
Sounds
That's
awesome.
pretty cool. And joining us was a surprise to me and Kevin, but apparently John and Adam knew, but joining us as well as Matt Glaman. What's new with you this week?
So yeah, Thanksgiving, I try to take a break, but that's also the week I was still an independent consultant contractor. So it was like half working, but I was actually working on PHP Stand Drupal, and I got really, really excited because out of the blue, this contributor Brombod, probably butchering their handle, came and started like delivering this awesome work to make the static analysis parts like actually work with Drupal. So I've been all jazzed about that and my new job at Acquia. So like I'm all aflutter right now after I don't know if you can ever call Thanksgiving a relaxing weekend because you're just running around and eating and like with family, but after a somewhat relaxing 4-day weekend, I'm all jazzed up.
Well, congratulations on the new job. It's always nice to get a new contributor to a project. So very cool. For me this week, nothing too exciting, but this morning I had to take the dog to the vet. He was a little bit overdue for a couple of vaccines. So he got all his shots up to date today and, the annual checkup, and he's doing pretty good, but because he's been vaccinated, he's tired. He's always really tired for the next day or two. So I'm looking forward to a calmer dog for the next 2 days. He always comes back with the energy, comes back with a vengeance. So Thursday or Friday is probably gonna be a little rough, but he should be pretty quiet today for the listeners. So we do have a new module for this week. So John, do you want to talk a little bit about the Gin admin theme?
Yeah, so this is a little bit of shameless self-promotion. We are our next show is going to be about the Gin admin theme, but I thought it would be good to kind of give the listeners a little preview of what the Gin admin theme does. And then, you know what, you can go install it on Simply Test Me and play with it, right? Yeah, we're bringing it all together here. So the Gin admin, we're closing the circles all around. The Gin admin theme is just that. It's a really sleek admin theme. I like it because you can kind of customize colors. It has a dark mode, which is nice. I use it on my personal website. Has a bunch of plugin modules, I guess you could call them, add-on modules to support layout builder and login box and stuff like that. So I recommend checking it out. It's just so nice. It's so nice to use it. I can't say more about it. Who here is using the Gin admin theme? Matt Glaman gives it 2 thumbs up.
I have installed it. I haven't released it to production on any sites though, but I'm kind of between that and Claro for a project right now.
I like to play fast and loose on my personal website. So once I install something, sometimes it usually makes it out to production.
Yeah, it's different when it's a client versus your personal site. That's for sure.
True. Matt, what's your take on Gin? What's your favorite aspect of it?
So I've been using Gin and pushing it to production since it came out because it's built on top of Claro. The only problem, quote problem, is just make sure you have the Gin toolbar and Gin layout builder module, because that just makes the toolbar look a little bit nicer. And it completely is a game changer for how you use layout builder too, with that interface. So it's been default since then. I know I've been sponsoring the maintainer for a while because I just use it on everything. And yeah, it builds on top of Claro, and I believe it's helped contribute to Claro. So it's kind of been like my default, and I view it as like the experimental version of the experimental admin theme.
I mean, it's also an admin
So
theme.
meta.
Yeah, when it's an admin theme, you can get away with a lot more. Like it's not public, so a lot of people have a lot more forgiveness.
I also like the fact that you can shift the toolbar to the side, so it can be vertical as opposed to horizontal, which is a nice change. Anyway, check it out, install it, play with it. That is the best way, I think, to experiment with the Gin admin theme.
So we are going to be talking about Simply Test Me today. So we had a previous show, episode 279, which was actually earlier this year in January. So listeners, feel free to go back and give a listen then to hear about all the nice things. Like everything we're going to be talking about today, I think was in the future back then. So it'll be a nice back-to-back episode. For our listeners who don't know about Simply Test Me though, Adam, can you give us the elevator pitch? What is the project?
Yeah, the project is sort of a free to use assistant that allows you to test Drupal, test modules, test patches, test distributions. It's intended to be completely automated. So, any user can try it for free. They can just type in what they want to test, or they can use our one-click demo buttons, which also allow them to spin up sort of a readily available instance. And they could load different patches or test multiple projects or test different branches or versions, et cetera. So there's a lot of fun options that allow people to test different things. But it's really intended to kind of lower the barrier, for contributors to try things out, to have some automated tools and really not deal with any of the overhead or burden of installing Drupal or trying to, set it up, which sometimes can be a little bit annoying. It has all the composer and all the infrastructure requirements, and it kind of automates all of that. So we try to make it really easy for people to use and get in and, learn Drupal and try things out and just have fun, and do it all for free. There's no risk. It's, the systems stay up for about 12 hours a piece. So you have a long time if you want to try certain things out or configure it in different ways. So it's really easy and sort of meant to be very intuitive for people to get in and learn about parts of Drupal.
Episode 279 has a lot of the backstory of Simply Test Me, and listeners can listen to that. But I was hoping you could give us a brief, condensed version of the history and how we got to what we're going to talk about today, which is the new version of Simply Test Me.
Yep, I'm happy to do that. So I believe, Simply Test Me was started by Patrick Drotloff, who he founded the project. And it's a little bit unique where it is both an open source project that's on Drupal.org, but also is a service. It's a system and services that run, free to use, and started back in right when Drush kind of started coming out, and some of the automation and scripting and some DevOps kind of started to become a thing. I think back in Drupal 6, kind of Drupal really, really, really early planning for Drupal 7 days, even before that. But that was kind of like when Simply Test Me also started. In I think our earlier session, I had shared, I believe, a screenshot or had pasted part of that presentation that we gave before that showed like the old screenshot of it back. I think it was in I want to say it was 2005 or something. It feels like a really, it was really old. So especially compared to some of the new Drupal 9, Drupal 10 stuff that's kind of coming. So historically, it was really cutting edge at the time. I think it was kind of Drupal's first DevOps implementation, right? It installed Drupal. It automated the installation of modules using Drush, and it was pre-composer days. So it was really cool. It was a great use case and really showed what Drupal was able to do in more of an enterprise setting, right? And it was awesome in that case, and sort of rode the coattails of both Drupal's evolution and Drush's evolution and everything like that. But way back in the day, so everything, just to be clear, everything about Simply Test Me is completely free, everything. And we rely very heavily on community sponsorships. We rely heavily on sponsored services that are offered. And back in the day, we had folks like Druid and Lagoon that would sponsor these servers, and it would run with like virtual hosts and spinning up databases and deprovisioning databases and things. And it was like really very technically complex and somewhat antiquated by today's standards, right? But back then it was awesome. Like it was really cool, and it was a very innovative kind of way to look at this. And a lot of it was wired together with shell scripts and things of that nature, but also had, kind of this construct of this worker server, which had all the instances running on it. And then it had like the front end server that was running the Drupal application for Simply Test Me, but all of it was using the same code. And it used a precursor of Docker, actually called LXC, which is still around and still exists today. And so everything that was running was container-based, even back then, which was really cool, right? So it actually made it really neat to like, you could back things up fairly easily or restore things. And it also made things very composable. Like we had HA proxy, and we were pointing at specific containers. And it was really neat, kind of the way it was engineered. But I would say, though, the biggest challenge historically, aside from the fact that, I think newer technology came out and it started to kind of become dated and antiquated, was also the fact that it didn't have a really robust community of people maintaining it, right? A lot of weight fell on the shoulders of Patrick, unfortunately, to keep the systems running, keep the services running. And the fact that it was running all in its own kind of servers also put a really heavy maintenance burden, I think, on Patrick, which is really unfortunate, but then, if you look at the different offerings today, that different vendors in our community offer, hosting and things of that nature, and services to keep the hosting up to date. You don't have to maintain things like PHP or MySQL versions, or even run the operating system, right, and load those patches. So those are things that many of us take for granted, I think, in some of the offerings today. But that was one of the key things that Simply Test, always was kind of suffering from. Disks would fill up and incidents would happen, and you had to make sure it wasn't being tampered with or hacked with. It was like a pretty labor-intensive project. And then, so he decided he wanted to move on, and I took it over as a lead, and really wanted to just breathe life back into this project. That was my main goal. That was my primary responsibility. And also wanted to build community. We set up an open collective to get sponsorships. We started revolutionizing the underlying services as well, where instead of us running our own bare metal servers, we are leveraging a Tugboat as a backend. We have completely rewritten the way that instances are spun up. They're all ephemeral now as well. That's not running in one monolithic infrastructure. And then we also redid the server part of it as well. We're now using Amazing Lagoon as well, which has been great. So now we have a very, very, very lightweight footprint of what we maintain from a systems level. And that allows us to spend significantly more time on the application and also the features of Simply Test Me, which I think better serves the community and also represents, the best interests of the project. There's some debate, about if we're, some people have questioned me and said like, hey, well, Adam, you're really not honoring the full history of the project, which was to keep it completely open source based and completely devoid of, different IP or different, stuff. But the partners that we use are actually deeply, deeply committed to open source. Amazing Lagoon itself is open source, right? We're just using their service. And also the folks from Tugboat and Lullabot have done so much for the Drupal community alone, as well, that it's really been great. And we're happy to just use their services as well, because we know that they're great partners with the open source community. There's a lot of alignment there. So that's a little bit about where we've been. And I know Matt's also here. So Matt was a key, architect for us rebuilding Simply Test Me in Drupal 9, which we talked about a good bit on the last episode that we were on. But we've come a long way to also, totally soup to nuts rebuilding Simply Test Me in a completely brand new way using modern technology as well, which we're very proud of. And we're really, really glad that we got to a point where we launched it, right? We finally launched it and it's been running. So we're really, really stoked about that.
So Simply Test Me recently got an upgrade. Can you tell us about that?
Matt, why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, so since January of this year, been working on upgrading Simply Test Me. It's now on Drupal 9 and has a React front end. And it's been quite a journey because it wasn't a rewrite. There were attempts to port Simply Test Me from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8. And instead of doing like the normal developer hat thing where you just like, throw out the, don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. I worked and ported and improved the existing code. So there was a lot of time in ensuring that we had that existing code ported over. And that configuration form for Simply Test Me, if you haven't played with it yet, when you go through it, there are a lot of inputs and components. Like we need to mirror all the projects from Drupal.org into like a local cache on Simply Test Me. You have to be able to query those and then know all the versions and core compatibility. I spent about a month recreating, if you will, Composer's compatibility checks. Like we cache that data. So say that I want to take Path Auto, because this is actually one of the test cases. Path Auto 1.8 is compatible with Drupal 8 and Drupal 9. But if you pick Path Auto 1.3, let's say, that's only compatible with Drupal 8. So you need to know what Drupal core version somebody can work with. And then even when you add additional projects, you can't take Path Auto and Token and then pick a version of Token that's incompatible with Drupal 9. So, it's rabbit holes all the way down. And it was quite a process. And I did actually do a lot of the development live on my Twitch channel. And I tried to do that every Monday around 2 Mondays. Before it was Sundays, then Sundays got hard once it was nice out. Mondays, I'm getting into my new schedule groove, but I do want to continue doing work on that on Mondays, because it just helps show like, hey, this is what's going into it, and here's the recent developments, and also helps me block off time when I do those live streams to keep pushing it forward.
So there's a question. Obviously, Adam, you work for Acquia. Matt, you now work for Acquia. Like, is Acquia providing you both with time to work on Simply Test Me?
Honestly, I do a lot of work outside of my day job on this project. It's not a sponsored project by Acquia by any stretch of the imagination. But I also am kind of fortunate, and Matt will hopefully learn this as well, given that he's new in his role, that, Acquia is very supportive of the community. They don't tell me exactly how to use my time. If I feel like I need to work on some things and want to give some time towards the project, they're very supportive of that. And so honestly, it's really by my own choice that I, work when I work on it. But that's really about it.
Matt, when did the new version launch?
That was about 2 months. It was October. I also, like, October is a blur, so I don't know anything of what happened like between September and now. But I believe it was in October that we launched, because it was finally like, we just got to do it, right? There's like all kinds of, if you go to the front end, I'm sure you're going to find bugs in the React code, because that was started really simple and it's a very complex form. But finally, we're just like, punch it. We got to launch something and get it going. And it is working. And I know lots of folks are using it. Jacob from Webform, I know, is coming up with some cool ideas to use it and extend it even further, which I'm glad we just launched it. Sometimes perfection is the enemy. So
That's exactly right. Yeah, I remember. So Matt's gonna laugh, right? But like, I think it was, what was it, September-ish, end of September, and I sent Matt a note, and I'm like, we have to launch this thing. Like, we were getting so many pings about the existing service, and people were getting really frustrated, and we were like right on the cusp. And I just said to Matt, like, we got to get this done. So like, we really buckled in and we resolved, I think, a lot of like the bigger challenges. We went through this really in-depth testing. We had this big, Matt will remember this big, ugly Google Doc with like, tons of different things that we were like testing and different versions of Drupal and like everything like that across different projects, multiple projects, things with patches, different versions of core, different distributions. So we were like going through this really wild matrix, and we got most of everything patched up and ready. But we just had to, really, get the job done, kind of like, just bunker in and get it delivered. So yeah.
So I want to clarify something that you mentioned before I move on to this next question. Was this an upgrade from 7 to 8 to 9, or was it a migration from 7 to 9?
I can start, but Matt can elaborate. It was neither. It was a complete rewrite. Okay. So I think that might be a misperception. That most websites, I guess, right, that are using Drupal have the options of updating their deprecated code and just, rebuilding their theme and reinstalling core and going through a migration path. We made a very conscious decision, quite honestly, that with the amount of sort of technical debt that had been accrued over the years, we just gutted it. We literally put a fresh version of Drupal in and just started rewriting the features. And to Matt's point, we actually did before a couple restarts on that as well, where we were somewhat architecting it a little bit like we had before, even though it was a complete rewrite. We were kind of building a newer, better version of what we had. But there were even ways that Matt, when he got much more involved, decided to go even deeper and say, no, we don't need to engineer it that way. We can engineer it in this better way. And I remember there was one, do you remember the diff, Matt, that you had done that was like removed like 2,800 lines of code from?
Oh, wow.
So
lots of annotated code.
Yeah, that was awesome. I was like, yes. But Matt, I'm sure you have a lot more to say about just sort of how we approached this.
Yeah. So, I took the approach with my history in a lot of e-commerce sites. Well, the product data doesn't live in Drupal, it lives somewhere else. So trash it. Like, who cares? There's nothing to migrate. You just re-import it. And that's the approach we took. The code is rewritten, and the data store, like the source of truth, is Drupal.org, and the Drupal.org API with the project data, and then also the update channels that provide all the XML. That's our source of truth. So just wipe it clean and re-import. So that was it. Just like one day I had my laptop open as that command line ran in the background and just prayed that all like 200,000 or whatever projects imported along with all their version data. And also Simply Test Me does have like a miss. So if it's a miss, it tries to go fetch it on demand. So we didn't have to worry about migrating all the existing data because we just fresh import.
So are you guys essentially storing the data locally from Drupal.org for speed, basically?
Yes. Speed, and think of like working with a MySQL database that's highly normalized, like Drupal, right? Like you have your entity table, and then you got, bundle fields are in different tables, and everything's highly normalized for relationships and all that. That's great and all, except for when you need to transform data. So think of the cached version as our denormalization of saying we have project data, we have release compatibility with core, and we that would be so hard to do on the fly and waste so much CPU time that we do that in the back end. So that way we can more easily fetch and rely just on queries to the database.
And is that simply speeding up the front end of things, or is that speeding up the actual build process within Tugboat?
That actually is all before Tugboat. So that's just the front end form, because otherwise, if we tried to say you want to use Path Auto with token, but you pick an incompatible core version, there's nothing on Drupal.org's APIs that tells us that. So we actually have to fetch that data and enrich it when we cache it inside Simply Test Me. Like we use Composer has the Semver package that it uses. We use that against the release data and perform on the fly checks, but we have to have that that initial data inside Drupal to make it easier to compute.
I'm gonna go down the rabbit hole here and ask a question. So what, have you ever thought of, or has there ever been a conversation about possibly adding that Composer checking to Drupal.org, like to the root API?
So just to preface, like Drupal.org has an API, but it's the REST WS module, which has no way to define custom endpoints. It just takes the basic entity system in Drupal 7 and exposes it as a REST API.
I remember REST WS.
Yeah.
The first patch the first patch I ever wrote was for getting images properly in that system, I think, in my life.
So it's not very robust. And honestly, the DA, the Drupal Association, has a lot bigger fish to fry, like the GitLab migration and integration. Mm-hmm. And really, it's only Simply Test Me that's doing this. Like as I sat there, I'm reinventing Composer right now. Why am I doing this? It's like, well, we have to. And I even looked now where I think it could go is I was really hoping that the update module would have some goodies of code. Well, it doesn't. And there's like kind of parts that do this, but not a lot. So I actually see it as we solved this problem in Simply Test Me. Well, now we have a way to actually possibly improve the update module. Mm-hmm. So that's the approach I'd rather see. Not add an API to Drupal.org, but is there a way to improve the update module and put this code back into Drupal core? And maybe that would be more palatable by the Drupal core committers now that there's like the whole idea of the project browser and automated updates. Yeah. Maybe the work done in Simply Test Me can actually align with core initiatives. That would be really interesting.
And it's in line with what we want to do, right? Like we don't want to work in a silo. So if we see opportunities like that, we're very keen to do that.
Right. Okay. So getting back on track here, I noticed that Simply Test Me goes up to, you can install Drupal 9.3 release candidate 1, I think is what I just saw. When do you expect Drupal 10 to be on Simply Test Me?
Well, considering, when this airs, the Drupal 10 branch will have been cut only 5 days beforehand. So as time of recording, they just cut the 10.x branch and it's failing on head. So we have a cron script that pulls the version data for Drupal core periodically. So once they create a release node on Drupal.org and it's available to the API, you should be able to press that button and test Drupal core 10.x with no warranty included, since head tests are even failing on Drupal CI right now.
So that's happening basically automatically is what you're telling me.
I'm going to put air quotes on there because, we are maintaining it as best as we can. We know the scripts are there, but definitely our one area that's missing is observability. And I know we can tap into more of that into the Lagoon system, but we haven't yet. So it should be. If it's airing, I don't really know because I haven't logged in to check because I've been a little bit busy. So that is the one black hole, but it should be mostly automated. And, like Adam said, by getting rid of all the other services and maintenance, we can actually just focus on the application layer that should be doing those things.
How often do you sorry, I was just saying, how often do you refresh that cache then? Is that a manual process or is that?
It's on cron and runs at X time in the code. It says when to do things. So offhand, I don't know, but there is a hook cron that calls our core version manager service to go refresh that data after, I think it's it has a thought auto check once a day because there's no point in checking it every 10 minutes or whatever we run. That's definitely an area that needs to be more robust because synchronizing projects should go into a queue they get dumped over time and only processed every so often. but we should be updating data at least like once a day, I believe. There might be an open issue about project versions actually not refreshing, but core is at least supposed to be updating once a day.
Okay.
Last time on the show, there was talk of your technology partners. Does SimplyTest.me have any new partners?
Well, we lost a partner when Bluehorn Digital decided to fold,
Fair
in favor of taking.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly. No, we the partner program is still fairly new. I think we're looking to expand that. Really, it kind of stems from the contribution. That's really what we're seeking, is just some predictable contribution back to the project somehow. Some people do that through, offering their services. That's a Tugboat and the Lagoon partners. But then we have, our development partners as well. And QED42 has been amazing at like working through different theming related issues and some React code. Bluehorn and Matt before were really awesome and doing a lot of contribution as well. And we're trying to incent that. We also offer our partners first dibs at any paid work. Like if we use our open collective and we want to sponsor a feature, that we give them first right of refusal to, take that bid for whatever we feel like we can afford for that. It's not obviously not a lot, but also that's how we make sure that the money that we raise, through the community goes right back into the project. We're not doing anything else with that. But we also try to encourage our partners as well to train other people. Like, we also want to make sure that they use it as an opportunity to, say, mentor somebody that's new to community development, or wants to have that kind of experience of working with, say, Matt or I or others in the space as well, or Amy June as well. She's done a lot of different SimplyTest work, and it's been really good to have her participate.
So I'm curious about how the partnership with Tugboat and Amazy has been. So you mentioned Amazy a couple of times, and you talked about Tugboat last time you were on. And I'm actually considering Amazy for a project that's spinning up right now. And we had Michael and Toby on a few months ago, episode 257, to talk about, actually it's more than a few months ago, to talk about Kubernetes. They talked about Amazy and their Lagoon project. And I'm curious, as somebody who's been using it, what that experience has been like. And for our listeners, I'd like to clarify, are we using Lagoon just for the front end of SimplyTest.me and then kind of all the instances run on Tugboat, or is Amazy also hosting something else as well?
Yeah, I mean, it runs our front end website. If you go to SimplyTest.me, you are accessing our public facing site. It's a Drupal distribution. It's run on Amazy Lagoon. Our experience so far with them has been fantastic. I think also you have to consider where we've been with our project, of when we're running our own Linux servers and having to, clean up logs and look at what's going on and run the service. Like, it's been a complete breath of fresh air to use, a system that is largely just running itself, right? And that's been really awesome. And Matt's going to laugh a bit. So we did have our first, I would call it like an incident, okay, where we have a lot of DevOps in our new SimplyTest.me, a lot of different checks. It runs automated tests. It spins up on-demand environments. We can test those environments. We have GitHub Actions that's already in place as well, that we can automatically deploy things based on where it is in different branches and when things are merged in from pull requests. We also have Violinist. That's another sort of newer partner of ours that has been awesome, by the way, at like spinning up pull requests for us to automate the updates, the code updates. And we do it on an ongoing basis. It's been phenomenal. But with Lagoon, it's been really good to use their services, and making use of their different on-demand environments is really cool. Just automatically deploying things. It has a good connection in with GitHub as well. So it's been really nice to have those two things kind of in line with each other. And one thing that is kind of stands out to me is their service was really, really nice as well. And they offer it to us for free. It's sponsored by them. And so we have basically this ability to have all these backups and things of that nature, which is awesome. And when we had our incident a couple of weeks ago, it's been probably a month or so now, they were able to help us out tremendously. They took care of all the different systems and everything like that. And they restored everything back up like it was nothing, and reverted our commits and everything of that nature. So it was really nice that they have great service, and the offerings are really, really slick. Matt, I don't know if you have any other features that you appreciate or anything like that, but
yeah, I've been using Lagoon actually before Simply Test Me, because they've also offered to host Contrib Kanban for quite a while, maybe a few years. And I just love the fact that it's a wrapper around Kubernetes. So it's like an orchestration tool for an orchestration tool. And I know I was reading news that Lagoon may actually be donated to the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, so the CNCF.
Oh, really?
Which is how there's the Apache projects, like CNCF is that for cloud computing. And it's just really interesting to know that it's an open source project that will be going to other open source projects and used by a greater community as well. So if you are planning to use it, you'll be leveraging existing stacks and buying into an actual open source platform. You can host it yourself if you want to. Wouldn't recommend it. Amazy's host, their managed solution is great, but it's just neat knowing that it's part of a bigger ecosystem.
Are you saying Amazy is amazing?
Amazy is amazing.
Oh boy.
Yep. That's it. Oh boy. So if you go to Simply Test Me, right, you will see there that you have two buttons to kind of launch one-click demos, one for commerce and one for Drupal's Umami demo. I'm just curious, what's the process for getting more demos like that up on Simply Test Me?
Open an issue and make a merge request, because they're plugins. One of the things that I worked on, and it's part of my bigger plan to revamp the entire build process, but one-click demos were converted to a plugin type. So you just define a plugin, you extend the base class, and then you customize some of the commands. I think we have 4 build steps, which is download, install, patch, something else. But you just override the methods to tweak those a little bit. So you can actually go to the Simply Test Me repo and look at the one. I think it's in the modules directory, Simply Test OCD for one-click demo. And then there's plugins, and you could just let's say Open Social, right? Let's say Open Social wanted a one-click demo. Create the issue fork, create the plugin, and you're good to go, off to the races. So it's really flexible there. And like I said, it's part of my idea to make configuring and modifying the build process on Tugboat a lot more dynamic, so we can have even more, of just a pluggable system that's easier for contributors to help maintain. It's the end goal.
Yeah, that was a key goal of how we went into the entire process of rebuilding this. Was trying to make it as sort of community friendly as possible. One thing too is we do have base previews as well, and that's something in the roadmap that we need to. That's one kind of systems maintenance thing that sort of sits or hangs out in this Git repository that's wired into Tugboat, that I think we have in our roadmap, basically to try to fold that feature into the Simply Test Me system so that it maintains it and then rebuilds those previews on Tugboat as needed. But without the base preview feature, it would be really slow, be really long. It basically kind of gives you a stock Drupal instance right out of the box, and we just update the code to pull whatever you want, whatever you specify. But the base preview loads all of the basics of the infrastructure, the PHP extensions, the version of PHP, et cetera. And we want to I do feel like it's important for us to get that into the application space as well. So instead of that being run and led by the Git repository that we have, it basically would be a function of the application. We could use something like cron to rebuild those, or have it contributable. Like if somebody says, hey, you should update from 7.4 to 8.1, right? we would just make, someone would be able to contribute that. And when the code gets merged, it would basically go in and rebuild those, base previews. So
Nice. So you talked about that being on the roadmap. What else is on the roadmap going forward?
I'm working through some of that right now. I think I'll be honest with you. We really jammed on this over the course of the last, year, even 18 months or so. It's been nice to have a little bit of a reprieve, from being able to build
That's
this
fair.
and run the old system. But we are definitely ideating on it. I think the observability and analytics are areas that we definitely want to invest more in. People ask all the time of like, hey, how many instances did you run last month? And what were people testing? And like, what's failing on the system right now? We don't have like great eyes. We know when the systems go down. We have all the base level monitoring of like the infrastructure in place. We know that like, hey, like when we have what's the I forget the name of it. The basic monitoring tool that kind of just pings different services and stuff and makes,
Down detector or pingdom.
Yeah, pingdom, something like that. Right. And
Yep.
we, have all the services wired in that like, if they do go down, we know when they go down. So we get notified about that. But we've had a really nice, kind of period of stability right now that, I've sort of have felt really good. The big cherry, the cherry on top for at least the last work that we did was I wrote it was like an 18-page blog post that I shared about the entire experience of rebuilding Simply Test Me and where we're going. And the last piece about it is that we are trying to stabilize a roadmap of being more predictable about the contributions, when we expect to do that, what we're prioritizing, why we're prioritizing it. Definitely the observability and analytical pieces are important. The base preview feature inside of the application is really important for maintainability. Those are things that stand out. So
Adam, I have no idea why you would say out loud that we've had a great period of stability. That is pretty much dooming yourself.
I was knocking on wood as I was saying that, and
okay.
when I was on mute.
Off camera, knocking on wood. Got it.
Absolutely. Yes, you can't quite see it. But I would say, though, you have to look at it in relative terms, right? When you had a system that was perpetually going down and was really hard to maintain, and, I'd be getting pinged at like, 1 p.m. on a Saturday afternoon if I was out with my kids and I'm seeing like the systems go down. These are things that, were really annoying, right? And also like for a free community service, right? It wasn't really in my day job or anything like that.
It's still a stress too. And
yes,
without the payment.
Yeah. And not that I expect to be paid, but it's my way of, hopefully giving back to the community. It's done a lot for me as well. So,
those types of stabilizations are always a huge achievement. It's always like a huge relief. I'm sure you sleep better at night.
Yeah, there's a lot of quality of life improvements when this thing is running well for me. So I appreciate it tremendously.
So I do have a couple of quick questions. One of the features that has been good on Simply Test Me that I've used many times is the ability to patch a module and just see it. I'm curious if you have any thoughts on the merge request. Obviously, you can use the diff from the merge, but I'm curious if there's any thoughts on the roadmap of tighter integration with merge requests.
Oh yeah. I'm sorry.
I'm curious what your thoughts are, because I saw your expression when I brought that up. So
that was the whole thought. Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely want to be added. GitLab has a GraphQL endpoint, so we can.
Okay.
There's various ways. So this kind of ties into the development of Simply Test Me as well, right? So Simply Test Me is actually a Drupal distribution that can have issue forks and branches and merge requests. To test that, well, we actually have a GitHub repo that's the Drupal site which pulls it in. So we have two repos. I created a GitHub action workflow that allows you to manually run the test for Simply Test.me by taking the issue fork name and branch, and it will clone that. It will configure Composer to clone that in instead of the default package. and run the
Okay.
test. So we essentially need to add that to simply test me. Now, I think the first iteration is going to be that really basic. Like if you want to test an issue fork, you got to give us the fork name. So it's like, what is it? Like issues/block. You can copy it on the issue.
Yeah.
View. It's not the greatest. This is not the greatest, but it is a way that we could do it. Because all you then do is say composer config repositories .0 or whatever. It adds one and say VCS. Here's the Git URL, which we can build knowing that it's git.drupalcode.org/issues/project name, and then branch name -dev. Like it's really easy to actually configure it. It's just building the user interface will be the hardest part.
Yeah.
So I've proofed can you clone this with given information with simply test itself to run our PHP unit tests on GitHub before we deploy to Lagoon. Now it's just building that into simply test as well. So it's been proven. It's just kicking the dirt and getting rolling on it.
Makes sense.
Definitely a roadmap item. I mean, I think, Matt, there's probably at least 20 people that have asked about that minimum right now.
And
so it's definitely on the list.
The hard part is balancing bugs in the current React code versus adding more complexity to that code as well. Like that honestly has me sitting and rolling my eyes. Like I kind of want to just like walk away for a minute, because there's like anything you want to add new features, but you have that pile of technical debt to address as well.
Okay.
So it's like one of those hackathon things. Like if I could just set aside like 6 hours of one day, we could have the React code fixed and have merge requests in. But it's just
Sure.
finding that kind of time can be hard.
Makes sense. Two quick questions. Next one is, I'm sure this is a request you get all the time too. What about weighting search results for projects? So for example, if you search for paragraph or paragraphs, like you can't find it because there's so many paragraph add-on modules.
Yeah. This actually just got brought up and deployed because when you typed in Drupal, it was picking like who knows what. And that's because we were sorting on, and it's so goofy too. Because it was doing a like query against the project title and short name and sorting by if it's a sandbox or not. And by sorting if it's a sandbox or not, caused the relevance of the like query to go sideways. And like I tried playing locally with actually a full text index in MySQL, and things just got weird. And then I tried adding search API with like the database, just like see, and that also got weird.
Yeah, I know how painful search is.
Yeah,
so
and especially like trying to weight things. So there is one thing we could do, and what I would like to do. The problem is that project usage statistics are not available over the API. Because ideally,
really? I didn't know that.
Yeah. So ideally, we would be pulling that in with the projects and sorting by project weight, but we can't.
Okay.
Now, somebody please prove, if somebody can prove me wrong, I would love it, because then we can have simply test me. So when you type in paragraphs, we'll sort by usage statistics.
That answers my question perfectly. I mean,
there's all these little nits. There's all these little things too.
Yeah. No. Thank you. Last question that I have.
I do have one other comment about that. I think the great thing is, though, it's way easier for us to solve that problem now than where we've been in the past, which is awesome. And the other thing is that, these are the great kinds of conversations that we're having with community members right now, because our focus is moving into how do we make this the most usable system possible, right? And it's something that it's been like eye-opening, because it used to be that, we couldn't even dream of implementing that feature. But now we're like, yeah, of course we can do that. We can, if we find the technical path, we can implement it. Like it's way more like tactical at this point now. And it's like really great and sort of relieving on our parts, I think, just to be in a position to consider that, right? And so, it's really awesome. And we very much are open and welcome all these ideas from the community about, hey, can we improve this somehow? Can we, implement certain things to make it even better for people? And we're in a good spot to do it.
It really seems
that-
like you
that-
guys are coming to a great crossroads, right? Where
Yeah.
like, for Matt's example there, like, project browser is a thing that's picking up steam, right? And exposing that data to through the API is something that could be done through that, right? Feel free to take that note and run with it, Matt. I see your eyes light up there, but also
He's coding it as you're talking right now.
That's fine, as long as he gives me credit on the patch. That's all I ask. And then you guys have a stable platform to work off of and build on top of. So like those things and community support are all bringing this together, which is great to see.
Yeah, I mean that's a sign of a great partner when you can offload something that's burning so much of your energy, preventing you from moving forward. So now you don't have to focus on the ephemeral infrastructure or the actual hosting infrastructure. You can focus on features and bug fixes. Okay, last question. I know that they solve different problems, but there are some parallels with the Drupal pod initiative or project that Offer manages. I'm curious if you guys have learned anything from each other and how they're being used, or if you use Drupal pod, how that works.
I'll start, but so there's a high degree of sort of synergy between the two projects, right? One, is kind of like a cloud-based IDE, like getting off of your system. And Simply Test Me doesn't offer, hasn't been designed to offer a development experience for end users. It's been one that, automates a lot of that experience, right? But there's been a long-standing desire to have more like tooling against a running instance, right? To have the ability to, make some code changes, test some code changes, clear cache, do certain things, right? So, a future offering around Gitpod combined with Simply Test Me, I think is very compelling for the community. And also, if you think of really as a pipe dream of allowing that to make patches and update patches back on certain issues, like let's say somebody picks an issue on Simply Test Me, and you could re-roll a patch and put it right back into the community somehow. Like that's an incredible workflow. I don't think there is anything like that in any open source project that I'm aware of. Fully soup to nuts from the infrastructure the whole way through the development experience and contribution experience would be unbelievable. So, yeah.
Very cool.
So you touched on community input. What do you need help with? How open source is the project? Can people submit MRs? How do people help?
Matt, do you want to take this one? I know you're really good at this.
So like I alluded to earlier that there's actually two repositories for Simply Test Me. One is on GitHub, and that's just the website. That's the composer.json that says pull in Drupal core. That actually just works because we have Violinist, which delivers our automatic updates. And we have that on a job to deploy, to periodically update and merge things in. So really all the work for contributors is on Drupal.org, which is nice. If you are being sponsored by your company, you get issue credits. So probably the best way that folks can help out is by just testing it out and reporting bugs and quirks and ideas. And the system is completely open to work with. Now, I need to document how to set this up locally. That is the one crux.
I could see that being a hurdle.
Yeah, distribution development has always been hard in Drupal. And for me, it's kind of a blind spot because I've been doing distribution development my entire Drupal career. So to me, I'm just like, oh, I know how to do this.
Yep.
So documenting that is probably the biggest hurdle on my part, or if there's a contributor who loves documentation and knows how to help document this, or can like just take the scratch notes from me and turn it into a doc, that would be huge. But once we have that set up, just contributing to the JavaScript code, like the React code for the form. Oh, hey, the state's kind of buggy on this when you pick this project with this version, and then 5 patches, and then all of a sudden the form resets. I don't know if that's a bug, but they could maybe help fix that if it were a bug.
Right.
The backend code is all Drupal. Some of it could be optimized. So if you're like, hey, I just saw in here, there's a lot of to-dos. I know when I write code, I am a to-do commenter. I put to-dos all over the place because it is my brain dump, because I don't remember things and I don't have time to open issues over everything. And some things don't warrant an issue up front. So if you want to, you could cruise through the Simply Test code, find the to-dos and say, this looks interesting. I'm going to open an issue and either work on it or ping Matt and say, hey, I saw you left this code, or use git annotate to see who left the to-do and say, hey, this looks like an interesting problem to solve. Can we chat about it? And I will gladly take 15 minutes to talk it over and empower them to contribute to it, because I need to scale up my time. So that is one way to do it.
And I think there is an opportunity for us to be a little bit more methodical about those contributions. Probably we could go through the to-dos, we could file some beginner issues and tag them appropriately for people to get in. We have seen some people do that. Kat Law at Acquia also kind of jumped in and did some cleanup of some React work, and that was really cool. She was awesome, diving in. And these are things we want to definitely, strengthen and enable. And I think we have a part in that. That's certainly something we can do better. But we're very open to it too. And we have a Slack channel, the Simply Test Me Slack channel. Anybody could pop on if they see an issue, they want to work on it. We're very open to it. And there's, a lot of good folks in there that have always chimed in, and we'll be there to give advice and things. I do want to make sure I don't want to call it a challenge, but we have had some people come in and say oh yeah, hey, I want to contribute this. And it's well, I'm not sure that's exactly in line with where we want to go or what we want to do or what we want to support. So I think, I would say we're open to ideas, but I think we would want to have a dialogue about that with the community, because the key difference with Simply Test Me is it's not just an open source project. We run a service too. If people have an idea and it's something that we think could possibly offer more maintenance for us, or something that we feel is a little bit risky for us to take on, it's something we want to at least talk through. So
that's fair.
Awesome. Adam and Matt, as always, it's been great having you on, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having us. It's always a pleasure to talk to all of you, and appreciate the support as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for having us. It's always a blast.
Do you have questions or feedback? Reach out to Talking Drupal on Twitter with the handle Talking Drupal, or via email at show@talkingdrupal.com. You can connect with our hosts and listen and other listeners on Drupal Slack in the Talking Drupal channel. If you're interested in show news, upcoming Drupal camps, local meetups, and Chad's Book Corner, sign up for our newsletter at talkingdrupal.com/newsletter.
You can promote your Drupal camp on Talking Drupal as well. You can learn more at talkingdrupal.com/camp promo.
Thank you, patrons, for supporting Talking Drupal. Your support is greatly appreciated. You can learn more about becoming a patron at talkingdrupal.com and clicking the Become a Patron button in the sidebar.
Thank you again for joining us. Adam, if our listeners had questions for you, wanted to reach you, what would be the best way?
I'm on Twitter at N3RDSTEIN, which is Nerdstein with the 3 in the second letter. And I'm also on the Drupal Slack, handle Nerdstein without a 3.
And Matt, if our listeners want to reach out to you?
Twitter's the best. My handle's NMDMatt. I am in Drupal Slack, but I keep that muted most times. So if you really need to get a hold of me, Twitter DMs is the best.
Sounds good. And Kevin, how about you?
Yep, I'm Kevin J. Thull on Twitter.
And John?
I'm John Picozzi, and you can find me on all the major social networks and Drupal.org at John Picozzi. And you can find out about EPAM at epam.com. You're hiring, so if you're interested in a job, go check it out.
And you can find me pretty much everywhere at Nixvan, NICXVAN.
And if you've enjoyed listening, we've enjoyed talking.
See you guys next week.